This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic. What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is April 20th, 420. What up? Just kidding. My name is Jonathan Osborne. As always, joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, what's up?
You couldn't resist. You just couldn't resist.
Yeah.
You,
I don't even partake. I never have.
Never have. Well,
never have.
I
asked for this kid. This is before Jesus, obviously. Asked this kid at a high school party for a hit. Took one hit. I was like, man, I don't feel anything. And then I was like, this is dumb. And then it just never did it again.
Well,
and here we are.
There you go. You got a case of the old SpongeBob suds? What's going on over there?
The SpongeBob suds. I don't know what those are.
You don't know what the suds are?
Nope.
SpongeBob people know. The suds. I mean, you're sick.
You know what? I'm a casual SpongeBob guy. Like after the age of like 7 or 8, I was like, you know what? I'm good with this. You know, I've seen all I need to see here.
But then
I know there are people that still like watch all SpongeBob.
Oh, they exist.
I love the memes, but I'm not a SpongeBob.
You're more
guy,
anime guy.
Oh, 100%.
That's the
Yeah,
animation
Naruto versus SpongeBob, dude. He would tear SpongeBob up. It wouldn't even be close. Are you kidding me? Come on now.
I don't think SpongeBob cares.
Yeah. So what are the SpongeBob suds when he's not feeling so hot?
Yeah, he's like, I got the suds. You got the suds,
I
Patrick.
definitely got the suds then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Me and the 4-year-old, she's got double eye, pink eye. Just not a good time. There's been a lot of hand washing in our house, a lot of holding my 4-year-old down so she'll let us put in the eye drops that were prescribed by the pediatrician. Yeah, today I just a lot of laying around and chilling. It's not having a fun time right now.
Yeah, nothing worse than sick kids.
Mm-hmm. Luckily, it's just her. Like the baby's good. Our 2-year-old is good. We'll see how long that lasts. But nothing is worse than multiple sick kids. Like that is really bad. And my poor wife, I haven't been sick in months. I mean, I guess it doesn't really make sense to knock on wood now because I'm already sick. But she just always happens to dodge whatever is going through the house. Like I had COVID 3 times. She dodged it all 3 times. Like it doesn't make any sense. They need to study her in a lab or something. But yeah, I'll be on the old rebound pretty soon here. Hopefully, we'll see. Anyway, folks, coming up on May 16th, we are just under 4 weeks away. I think it's like 27 days from now is the NBA Draft Lottery. We're having an NBA Draft Lottery watch party on May 16th at 7 o'clock. Still working on those details for the venue. We're hoping to have an update for you guys very, very soon. But make sure you clear your schedule for the night of May 16th. It is a Tuesday at 7 o'clock somewhere downtown Orlando. It's going to be a lot of fun, Luke.
Yeah, I know that people are probably, getting a little weary of the fact that we haven't announced anything yet as far as where it'll be. But just understand and be patient. It is not just us. We are figuring it out. And once we have all of the details, we'll present it that way. But hopefully you guys continue to listen, and then hopefully we can give you an announcement here in the next. Hopefully, I would love in the next week, in the next couple episodes.
I'm very confident, Luke, in saying it's probably going to be one of 2 places. I'm like at this point, if one doesn't work out, it's probably going to have to be the other place that we've discussed. So we should literally have a something to announce any day now. So if you guys are looking forward to that, just keep your eyes, ears open on the old Twitter, Instagram, listen to the pod, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. A little bit of Magic news. The Magic announced on Tuesday that they have named Arnie Kander as Vice President of Player Performance and Wellness. Arnie Kander brings more than 24 seasons of NBA experience. This is straight from the Magic press release. Responsible for overseeing the Magic's high-performance staff, including the management of athletic training services, injury reduction, please, and rehabilitation programming, strength and conditioning, sports science, recovery, and player nutrition. Kander has spent 23 seasons with the Detroit Pistons, originally joining the team during the spring of 1992 when he became the team's first strength and conditioning coach. His duties in Detroit included the prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation of injuries, as well as the design and implementation of specific programs that are aimed at enhancing individual players' flexibility, strength, and aerobic training. We don't really know what most of this means, Luke.
Not a clue.
We've heard some whispers that there could be a change in the Magic's training staff in between, this season and heading into next season. I don't know really what the hierarchy is going to look like for like the strength and training and all that kind of stuff. If Arnie is going to kind of clean the house and bring in his own staff, or he's going to keep some of the folks that are on staff currently. The one thing that jumped out to me is that Arnie was with Detroit for 23 seasons with the Detroit Pistons. I don't know what he was doing most recently. Let's see. Following his stint with Minnesota, he consulted with the Pistons and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Well, there you go. So he's been working as a consultant the last few years, and now he's here in Orlando. The fact that 2 straight years we've had some kind of turnover with the training staff tells me that the organization has not been happy the way that we just haven't been able to stay healthy. And it's encouraging that they're like, no, like we need to make changes. Like we need to improve. Like all this stuff has to get better. So hoping this is going to be the beginning of a very healthy stretch for the Magic.
And I feel slightly vindicated, Jonathan, because a month ago, maybe, I don't remember how long ago it was, one of our episodes here as of late, I pretty much just finally said it. And that what I said was, when are we going to hold training staff accountable for these injuries, Jonathan Isaac stuff, all that kind of stuff. And, I hate to point a finger, and that's essentially what it came down to, was that I think this offseason they should take a good hard look at the training staff. So to see that is the route, that there is at least some type of change, I mean, at the very top when it comes to being the VP, that's not nothing. Clearly they realized that was an issue. And I said something to the effect of, I hope that they do their research and due diligence, like I know they will, and pinpoint what the issue has been. Maybe it isn't the training staff, but clearly they've decided that they needed to input here somebody new in command, essentially, and get that under control because they deemed that was somewhere that needed help.
One thing we can all agree on is the Magic need more health. It wasn't like super, like it wasn't at the front of my mind as we were doing the front court grades, but going through and doing these backcourt grades, I'm like, wow, all of our guards missed so much time this season. Mm-hmm. So if we cannot agree on anything else, we can all agree that the Magic need health moving forward. So excited about the new hire, and hopefully it makes a positive impact on our health moving forward. Luke, did you want to talk a little bit about the updates with the midseason tourney and kind of what some of that stuff looks like?
Yeah, so it seems like reports are kind of getting more shored up now as we get, now that we're in the postseason and almost to the season where this end-season tournament will take place. Essentially, the report is coming pretty much from Woj and Bobby Marks. The NBA's end-season tournament, beginning in 2023-2024, will take place in early December, and it'll feature 3 rounds and prize money. And then we come to find out that the report is that Adam Silver is very much leaning toward these games being in special jerseys. Different jerseys is basically all we were given, as well as different arenas. So basically like a neutral court is what I took it as. So there's a lot of people trying to crap on the idea. And I don't know that I agree. Like, I want to see it play out. I want to see how it works. We also know that, they're being given each player of the winning team gets $500,000. So there's a lot that's going into it incentive wise for the players. I don't know how I feel because it doesn't, maybe we'll see by the intensity of these players how much they would enjoy the $500,000. You're going to have these guys. I wonder if two-way players are going to be eligible for this, if they're on the roster or whatever. Technically they are. Are they going to get the $500,000? Because that's crazy for them. And just some of these guys that are on, we've got a ton of rookies, not rookies, but guys on rookie contracts, Jonathan. could the Magic play their butts off in this tournament to try to get that $500,000? And I think that could be entertaining. But I would have liked to have seen like some more creativity when it comes to what the team as a whole will gain any type of advantage throughout the season. I don't know what it would be, but I do wonder if that would be something that gets added eventually.
I think that's really what will be needed to make these games super exciting. Will be, some kind of postseason implications with the winner of, like, if you win the mid. I'm not saying like an automatic bid or something like that, but maybe an automatic bid into like a play-in type of scenario. Like even if you're like 11 before 10 plays 9, 11 plays 10 or something. I don't know the answer, but I think that's ultimately where I would like to see it. I'm not super pumped about like the neutral site things, but I guess if you're having a midseason tournament, like travel is probably going to be a pretty big concern. And if you're at a neutral site and you can get 4 teams there or 8 teams there and limit the amount of travel they have to do, it's probably best for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And then it could allow you to go to some other cities. Maybe it's like Seattle or Kansas City or wherever, some of these markets that don't have NBA teams currently, and do a little test. We know that the league has been talking about expansion for the last couple of years, and then just kind of have it rotate. Like maybe 1 year the final is, or the semifinal for the midseason tournament is in Orlando.
Right.
And, you get to see the Warriors play the Grizzlies or whatever.
Yeah.
It could be kind of cool. I'm more so just kind of waiting to see how, like, once everything is finalized and like, let's get through a year of it and be like, okay, what do we kind of think about it? I don't want to make any judgments on it now, because I hated the play-in at first.
Yeah.
And I still do kind of hate the play-in in a certain sense, but their games are super fun.
Yeah. Games are fun. Teams like the Magic stay competitive. We don't have to watch them tank for half the year, which is nice. I just know that it's going to come down to it, Jonathan, with this in-season tournament, that at some point, maybe not the opening rounds, I'm hoping they do kind of a regional thing with that, but I don't know. They might be trying to kind of abolish conferences in that way and put, maybe they do put the Magic on a West Coast neutral site, which would stink for time's sake, because they're going to want fans and things like that. So I don't know. There's going to have to be a mix of, good teams and bad teams. If they do like groups, I don't know, like, because there's only 3 rounds. So there's not really a whole lot that you can get super creative with without having them travel a lot. So I don't know what that'll look like. That'll be interesting. I just hope that we don't have to battle time zones too much when it comes to that. The Magic, playing the championship game of that in-season tournament in LA, like that just wouldn't be ideal for us. But
not only that, but how fun would it be if like the mid-season tournament, like final, like one team gets home court advantage, like in Orlando, like the mid-season tournament final. How exciting and like how much fun would that be? Like going to something like that in your home arena. To me, that is way better than like the neutral site idea. But unfortunately, the reality is it's a business. They're trying to make as much money as possible. And it kind of like sucks. Like it takes a little bit of like the spirit of the game away. I feel like when every collective bargaining agreement, every single year, the conversation is, how can we exploit these players to make more money? How can the league make more money? How can the league make more money? The league is in a good place in terms of talent. Like the talent around the league has never been better. I feel like the league is in a really good place. I don't know that all of this kind of stuff is necessary, but hopefully it's good for the league, and hopefully it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, we will see. Maybe, and I'm brainstorming at this point, the first year it's neutral for everybody involved, that they somehow work it out where, it's neutral for everybody, and the winner gets to play all their games at home for the next in-season tournament or something like that. More incentive, and like for the Magic, that would be awesome to be able to, next year know that we're going to get all these games for the end season, high intensity, probably a postseason atmosphere if these players actually buy in and really want that $500,000. But we'll see. There's a lot that they can do with it.
The $500,000 though, like for your, Admiral Schofields, Kevon Harris, Caleb Houston's, that's going to be a big deal. But like Steph, for example, in a few years, that's going to be 1% of his contract per year. Like that's going to be absolutely nothing to some of those guys. So are we going to see even more of these guys getting rested during something like that? I think there's a big potential for that. I don't know. I feel like the potential negatives outweigh the benefits for a midseason tournament, and especially the way that it's currently being talked about. Again, the neutral site thing, unless they introduce some kind of postseason implication or postseason benefit for these teams, I don't know. I don't really. It's not a big deal to me, but I'll wait until we see it in live action before I really put a tombstone on it. Luke, let's talk about some of these player grades. So the last episode we did all of the front court, all of the bigs, all of Wendell, Paolo, Franz, and those guys. This week we're going to take a look at the backcourt. We're going to take a look at the guards. So we're talking about Markelle, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, Gary Harris, Caleb Houston, and Kevon Harris. Didn't want to really cover Terrence Ross, who's playing for another team currently, and then Jay Scrubb, Michael Carter Williams, MCW, not WCJ. Michael Carter Williams, those guys played in like a combined 6 or 7 games. So I didn't feel like it was really consequential to sit here and talk about those guys. But we'll kind of do the same thing. We'll break it up into 3 separate tiers here. First up, Kevon Harris. What was your expectation for Kevon, and then what kind of player grade did you give Kevon?
I didn't have too much expectation for Kevon. I hoped that we wouldn't see Kevon too much. But then obviously Markelle out at the beginning of the year, the injuries the Magic had, we obviously ended up seeing him for 34 games. I don't know. I think that his defense obviously shines through. You and I had the conversation between Kevon and Admiral. Who do we think has the better shot of being an NBA player contributing long term? We both agree it was Kevon. Now, for me, I didn't have much of an expectation for him, but defensively, he really surprised me, and that is the full reason, really, I'm giving him a B. Offensively, he shot 43.9% on 3 attempts a game, not a large volume. You would hope for a guy like that that's not shooting very much could shoot closer to 50, and not to mention his turnovers. He had averaged just slightly more turnovers than assists. There was times where he was frustrating to watch. He is not an NBA talent as of yet. If he gets to that point, that would be great. But I'll give him a B, just because I don't think he deserves a C, because what I expected was less, I would say. But it is solely really to do with his defense.
So C is like met expectations. B is exceeded expectations. A would be like greatly exceeded expectations. Kevon, I gave him a B as well. So 34 games he played this year. The Magic were 12-22 in those games. Averaged 4 points, 2.1 rebounds, shooting splits 43, 37, 75. His on-off numbers, the Magic were 4.8 points better per 100 possessions with Kevon on the floor, which was actually second highest on the entire team behind Franz Wagner. So he made an impact when he was on the floor. 34 games. I'm pretty sure like 25 of those came before February. So barely played down the stretch. And I think the reason that maybe I definitely can't get there to an A with him, even though he like really exceeded my expectations, because quite frankly, I didn't have expectations for him going into the season. Just because he was so bad offensively to start the year and was so frustrating to watch. Again, because we didn't have Markelle, we didn't have Gary Harris. He was thrown into a role where he was probably a little bit in over his head. That being said, I mean, 37% from 3 when I saw that. Obviously not a ton of volume from him, but I was like, okay, like there's something there. I don't know if he's ever going to be like a legitimate rotation NBA player, but I'm certainly not ready to write him off. So I gave him a B as well. Moving into the next tier, Gary Harris, Caleb Houston. Who would you like to start with, Luke?
We could start with Gary. Oh, Gary Harris. I gave Gary Harris an A. Obviously, unapologetically a Gary Harris fan. But for me, what he brought to this team, what I was hoping he could bring to this team this season specifically, was just someone that's able to shoot the basketball from beyond the perimeter, because you look at this roster, everybody can figure it out. Like, perimeter shooting, we've talked about it, was what the team would need. Shoots 43% from three on 4.5 attempts. Now, the one knock on Gary Harris is that people might think he should have been able to shoot more threes, to which I would argue he was the fifth option on offense all the time. He was always in the starting lineup. And I think that he was able to obviously contribute in the way that I thought that he could, but he did even better. I was hoping that he would shoot like 38% on 3.5 to 4 attempts a game, but instead doing what he did. Defensively, I think he's great. Defensively as well. If it's not for Jalen Suggs, he is the best guard defender on this team, I would say. I've said it before, quickest hands on the team, besides maybe Jalen. I really do enjoy Gary Harris. A lot of people give him crap, but he's getting an A for me.
So I gave Gary a B, although I'm not irate at the A. So 48 games for Gary. Magic were 22 and 26 in those games, averaged 24 minutes, 8 points, 2 rebounds, 1.2 assists, shooting splits of 45, 43, 90. On off, he was a minus 1.3 per 100 possessions with the Magic where Gary was on the floor, which is good for 46th percentile. Highest points per shot attempt on the team. He was 88th percentile in the entire league in that regard. 60% effective field goal percentage, 90th percentile. 3-point field goal percentage, he was in the 95th percentile. Steal percentage was in the 77th percentile. Just kind of the knock on Gary for me this year was just like really, I guess, just kind of like disappeared at times, where you would go for like minutes at a time, like, oh, like that's right, Gary is on the floor. And to your point, a lot of that is because he was like the fifth option most of the time. You know, he's in the starting lineup with some of these guys. But when you look at, I know we'll talk about Jalen in a second, it is a much smaller sample size. Like, we're talking about like 1,100 possessions to like a little bit over 100 possessions, I believe. But the starting lineup was so much better with Jalen Suggs, probably like unsustainably so. But I just wonder, like we talked about how Jalen, especially heading into the last quarter of the season, like after the All-Star break, like would we want to see Jalen in the starting lineup at some point? And it just didn't seem like Mosley was going to make a big change. Like something drastic would have had to happen for Jalen to be inserted into the starting lineup. But I feel like towards the end of the season, we were like kind of overdue for that. Like put Jalen into the starting lineup and see how much better this lineup can play. But Gary definitely exceeded my expectations. 43% from the floor was just like absolutely scorching the net the entire season. But yeah, I couldn't quite get to an A, but I'm not like irate about the A.
I mean, a lot of it is I'm just partial, so we'll get that
That's
straight.
Fair.
And I know that people will say that and take note of that, and that is completely fine. But listen, we have bias for this team. I have bias for certain players. There's a reason Gary Harris gets an A. There's and it's a miracle that Wendell Carter didn't get an A the other night, and I gave him a B plus. That's just because I already knew how great he was. So, an A for old Gary.
Yeah, Gary did much of what I expected him to do this season, but the 3-point shooting was like just went up another level, like really close to 40% for a good chunk last year, and shooting 43% for an entire season is not easy. So he did exceed my expectations, but didn't like kind of blow me out of the water. Next up, Caleb Houston, the rookie. This might be my bias because I love Caleb, but I gave Caleb a B. 51 games average, and I was surprised that he played that many games. I was kind of surprised that he appeared in 51 games for the Magic. 16 minutes per game, 3.8 points, 1.9 rebounds. The efficiency is not great. Splits of 36, 33, and 83. On-off numbers, the Magic were 3.8 points worse per 100 possessions with Caleb on the floor. I think a lot of that can be attributed to just playing in garbage time, playing with the second unit primarily. But that was 32nd percentile in the league. 73% of all of his field goal attempts were threes, which did not surprise me at all. That's good for the 90th percentile in terms of percentage of all field goal attempts being threes. But in the G League, where he played 12 games, he averaged 29 minutes, 16 points, 5 rebounds, 1.6 assists, shooting splits of 40, 36, 91. I don't know that it's appropriate to bring his G League stats into this, but it just kind of solidifies for me with a little bit more reps, maybe potentially a bigger role, a role that maybe he's a little bit more, has more confidence next year. He is a capable shooter. Like we've said it from Summer League, this kid's stroke, Ayo, is so nice, Ayo. I cannot see a world where this kid does not become a good shooter, especially 83% from the free throw line. Small sample size, really limited to getting to the free throw line this year. That just isn't his role and what he's asked to do. But like defensively, on ball struggled sometimes, but like off ball, also rookie mistakes. Every rookie is going to go through that. We saw that with Paolo Banchero as well. But for the most part, like played within himself, played within his role, was in the right spots. And what do you expect out of a second round pick? I think it was like the 42nd pick. He exceeded expectations for me. Caleb Houston gets a B from me.
Okay. I'm giving Caleb a C. I'm just the. I don't think I know he is better than what his stats say, but at the end of the day, his production is his production. Like you said, 33.8% from three, 36% from the field because a large chunk of his attempts were from three. 2.7 threes a game, 3.6 total field goals a game. I would have liked to have seen a little more from him in some aspects. But at the same time, like you said, second round pick, what are you going to expect from him? But that's why I just kept him at a C. He wasn't close to a D at all. If anything, he was closer to a B for me than a C or than a D.
And I think that's totally fair. Like you mentioned, the efficiencies weren't great, but for me, like a 42nd pick, I believe he was in the second round, like a guy that I can see like having a path to becoming a really good rotation player. And outside of the shooting, basically everywhere else was pretty solid, especially for a rookie. So, but yeah, not mad at the C whatsoever. So our next tier, we're going to get into Markelle, Cole, and Jalen. I really want to start with Cole here just because like I was super impressed by the season that he had, especially like the second half of the season. But when you get into the numbers and just really how he improved across the board, I was blown away. So I gave Cole an A. In 60 games, the Magic were 28 and 32 in those games, averaged 26 minutes per game, 13 points, 4.8 rebounds, 3.9 assists, shooting splits of 45, 36, 89. 45 is where we've been begging Cole Anthony to get for 2 years, and he did that for an entire season. On off, the Magic were 2.5 points per 100 possessions better with Cole on the floor. That's good for the 66th percentile. With the lowest usage percentage of his career so far, he averages best points per shot attempt, best turnover percentage, best effective field goal percentage, best true shooting percentage, best rim field goal percentage, best mid-range field goal percentage, best three-point shooting percentage, best block percentage, and best rebound percentage. Just all across the board, less minutes, getting the ball less, improved everywhere, especially the second half of the season. Cole, it's an easy A for me.
Yeah. For me, Cole Anthony got an A. He got an A from me as well for, a lot of the same reasons I don't really need to reiterate. But for me, the Cole Anthony experience this year was best separated in two halves. And you talk about his improvement and the way that he did that. He plays 60 games this year. His first 30 games of this season, Jonathan, he averages 11 points, 4.5 rebounds, 4 assists. But where I want to really pay attention to is his shooting splits here in regard to field goal and 3-point. His first 30 games, Jonathan, he shoots 38% from the field and 29.6% from three. And then in his last 30 games of the season, he shoots 47.8% from the field and 42% from three, and on 3.5 attempts a game. So he actually shot more threes that second half of the year, his second, latter half of 30 games. And he was more efficient across the board. As I mentioned, like his counting stats, the first 30 at basically 11, 4.5, and 4. His second half of the year, 14, 5, and 3.5. So just night and day difference when it came to Cole Anthony. And I think just the fact that at any point in a large amount of games that he was shooting, 29% from three, and he finishes the season where he did at 36.5% is absurd and does show that the growth that he took in such a crazy short amount of time.
I feel like every time we have this conversation, I get closer and closer. Where are you on signing Cole Anthony to an extension this offseason?
Yeah, I remember the last time we spoke about this, I pretty much said that I didn't know, and that I more so was probably leaning towards like let him play it out. I don't know if you want. If I listen, I still am skeptical about him being the 6-man role long term and not getting irritated about it, because his personality just screams that he wants to be a starter, and I appreciate it, but I just need to see long term that he's able to commit to being the 6-man role. Clearly, he bought in because there was improvement this year, but is he going to buy in for years to come? If that's, if there isn't solid improvement to where he can, you can make an argument for him being a starter on this team. I just think the more talented this team gets, it's going to get even harder to become a starter. But if he's taking leaps as quickly as he did the second half of this year, maybe he can be. And that's going to be the conversation we do have eventually. If Cole continues on this trajectory, are we going to be yelling for Mosley to put him in the starting lineup? But that's going to mean that he's better than Jalen by far. And that's going to mean that he's better than maybe Markelle, or he just plays alongside him. But, I mean, the shooting that he provides you can't argue it. The shooting that he provides is exactly what you want next to a guy like Markelle Fultz. But Jalen Suggs made a huge improvement as well. So I just don't know. I fear it's going to come down to Cole Anthony against Jalen Suggs. And I think that it's going to be not just choosing who starts and who is on the bench, but which player are you going to cut ties with? Because you can't pay everybody. So that's going to be a conversation that happens down the road. That's going to be a very hard conversation. But we'll see what happens with those two.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like every time we have this conversation, I get a little bit closer to just being like, hey, like re-sign him.
Yeah.
Especially like given how rough like the first 30 games were, and you kind of pointed out the efficiencies a moment ago. The fact that he still ended up like career high best numbers in like effective field goal percentage, true shooting, finishing at the rim, mid-range shooting, 3-point shooting, it just goes to show how good he was like the last 30 games. And in my opinion, the way he was talking during the exit interviews, it feels like winning cures a lot of things. Like winning solves a lot of problems. If this team is winning, I think he'll be happy. Maybe not ecstatic coming off the bench, but I think he'll be happy in his role. And he spoke it with a level of confidence about what that role was able to do for him. I do think he views it in a much more positive light than maybe he did at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this team is absolutely going to have to make some guard decisions in the next 2-3 years, and I don't envy the front office whatsoever. Luke, where do you want to go next? You want to go Markelle or you want to go Jalen?
Let's go Markelle. Let's go Markelle. And for me, when it comes to Markelle Fultz and what you expected from him, he makes a huge jump in just being willing to shoot the 3 ball this year. And obviously this is a big thing that I'm pointing out with a lot of these guys is their 3-point shooting, because it is so pivotal. But he takes a step up, and he plays the most minutes per game of his whole career. He also plays the second most games in his career. So a lot of good came from Markelle Fultz this year. There are so many numbers that I'm sure you're going to share that back up Markelle Fultz as a whole and what you can get from him. We knew, you and I talked about it all last season. This team needs a calming presence. This in the first 25 games, we talked a lot about that. You talked a lot about that. You need a guy like Markelle Fultz to come in and right the ship and calm everybody down. Well, he did just that when he came in this year, right? We've seen it time and time again how much better he makes this team. For me, it is hard not to give Markelle Fultz an A, but I think I'm going to give him a B. In this situation, I'm going to give him a B. I'm going to ride with the B because C is meeting expectation. My expectation for Markelle was still high. So I mean, the fact he averages 14, almost 6 and 4 this year, and I mean, Marks gets those benchmarks that I just talked about. I'm going to give him a B.
So I went an A with Markelle because to me he really exceeded my expectations. So 60 games for Markelle. The Magic were 29 and 31, right around 500 in those games. Averaged 29 minutes, 14 points, 3.9 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.5 steals, shooting splits of 51, 31, 78. This is where Markelle Fultz is a bit of a puzzle, and it just goes to show you that like advanced analytics aren't the end all be all, and they don't always paint like the entire picture. Because Markelle, with Markelle on the floor, the Magic were 1.1 points worse per 100 possessions, which was good for 47th percentile in the league. And you watch the Magic for 10 minutes, and it's so much like it's apparent how much better the Magic are with him on the floor. His 29% assist percentage, so total baskets made with you on the floor, how many do you assist? So Markelle almost 1 out of every 3, which is good for 96th percentile. 37% of his baskets were assisted. So what is that? 63% of his baskets were unassisted. That's good for 91st percentile in the league. He's 76th percentile in block percentage. Total field goal attempts with you on the floor. How many do you get to and block? 76th percentile in blocks, and then 85th percentile in steal percentage. Markelle Fultz, just both sides of the basketball, just showed like he is that guy, the guy that was drafted number 1 overall out of Washington. Both sides of the floor. The shooting is coming along. We saw that more towards the end of the year, like the pull up, but 31% from the 3-point line, his best of his career on 1.5 attempts. So in 2019, 2020, it was 1.9 attempts. 2020, 2021, it was only 8 games, but it was 2 attempts. So a little bit lower than that, but I think because of like the difference in his role with Franz and Paolo being on the floor, and as he gets more comfortable taking those shots, we're going to see that increase. He's come a long way. Like first season, 0%, wasn't really shooting the ball, 14 games with the 76ers. The second year in 19 games, 28%, 26 the next year, then 25, then 23. Almost an 8% increase this year, up to 31. So we'll have this conversation about Jalen, but like you can increase your 3-point percentage by 8 points in 1 year. Why can't you increase it another 3 or 4% and get to league average with Markelle? You and I have also had the conversation, or really I've kind of asked the question that why did I feel that, so many times Markelle just kind of like disappeared offensively, like too many nights where he would have like 8 points or 9 points or 10 points. And 14 points a game, really scored the ball pretty well. The later part of the season, having games where he'd score 25 points, 28 points, 25 points, 25 points, 21 points, like showed that he is capable of shouldering more of a load offensively. And to me, that was the question that I had going into this season: is how much more is the 3-point shooting going to improve? And sure, he was fantastic at distributing the ball last season, but pretty limited sample size. Last year played in 18 games. I wanted to see if he could keep that up, and 96th percentile in terms of team's assist percentage showed me that he really is like that. So for me, Markelle got an A.
I want to add, and I'm not mad at the A at all. I think that I was very, very close to it. But I think the next thing that I want to see from Markelle Fultz, and I was hoping we would get it this year, obviously he takes a bit of a scoring bump, so it takes away from, maybe being able to distribute as much. I want to see him have over 6 assists in a year. Like I want his average to be over 6, because the last person to do that was Elfrid Payton, I believe, for this team. And the crazy thing about Elfrid Payton, I was just looking at this, he averaged almost 13 a game. Like in his best season, he played all 82. He started 58 games. He played 29 minutes a game, similar to Markelle in terms of the minutes that Markelle played this year. Had almost 13 points a game, 6.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, basically, which is crazy. But it also goes to show, like, I'm like, how did Elfrid Payton have over 6 assists? Because I feel like Markelle Fultz should have so many more, average so many more. And I'm just realizing how difficult it is to get over that 6 assists mark, especially with this team. Like, we just haven't had a guy that's been able to do that. And I think, Cole Anthony got close last year. Cole Anthony had 5.7 assists per game last year when he was taking over a lot of those point guard roles. Worst team, obviously. But it's just very interesting to me how difficult it is to get that number up, because Markel's essentially been averaging 5 assists since he joined the Magic every year. Now, granted, he's only played really 2 sizable seasons, but so yeah, I want to see even more distributing. I think next year he could take more of a backseat, depending on the picks, backseat in terms of scoring, to where like we just want him to improve from the 3-point stance, from that perspective, as well as just distribute the ball more, like really channel the inner point guard action with Markelle. I think that's what we want to see next year, even more so than this year.
I think a lot of that is also just like given like the high usage rates of Paolo and Franz. I think Markelle out of those 3 guys is second. Like he's at like 23.6% and Franz is at 23.3. So those guys, it's really like a 3-headed Hydra kind of, my turn, your turn, his turn, kind of thing. I think if Markelle like was, put in like a Chris Paul role where he's maybe not with the Suns, but earlier in his career where he's just really setting the table for everyone, which I think he's capable of, but I think it's a strength of the Magic that we don't have one guy who has to do that. I think one day we're going to look back on that 5-20 stretch without Markelle, without Cole Anthony, and we're going to be thankful for that, because we got to put Paolo and Franz as young players into so many of those reps to start the season. And I think that's going to be super beneficial for them and for the Magic long term. We always talk about this. Come playoff time, the best teams in terms of like offensive basketball and offensive efficiency always have multiple ball handlers, like multiple guys that can go and make plays for themselves, especially as you get into those later rounds and things really slow down a lot. But I totally think Markelle is capable of getting there. All right, let's talk about Jalen last, but certainly not least. This might be my bias. I gave Jalen an A. Greatly exceeded my expectations. 53 games, the Magic were 20-33 in those games. He averaged 23 minutes, 10 points, 3 rebounds, 2.9 assists, 1.3 steals, shooting splits of 42, 32, 72. On-off numbers, the Magic were 1.1 points better per 100 possessions with Jalen on the floor, which is good for 59th percentile. He was 93rd percentile for his position in block percentage, 93rd percentile for steal percentage, but was 27th in foul percentage. For as good of a defender as he is, he's still fouling too often. Looking at his efficiency improvements, effective field goal percentage went from 39% to 49%. Mid-range went from 27% to 39%. 3-point percentage went from 21 to 32%. And if you're looking at cleaning the glass, which I should have mentioned this at the top of the show, all these stats are either coming from NBA.com or from cleaning the glass. If you get rid of what they call heaves, which is like end of shot clock or end of quarter, where you're just like, you don't really have a good look and you're just shooting the ball, they actually rate Jalen as a 34% 3-point shooter. So even more improved than maybe we think when you take away those kind of end of shot clock and end of quarter heaves. So Jalen, I mean, all across the board, improved at least a little bit, was arguably an elite level defender that last year, absolutely an elite defender this year. I feel like if the Magic were maybe a little bit better of a team, you could make an argument for one of the, all defensive teams. A little bit better as a ball handler, still needs to improve there, but offensively, just the flashes that he's shown in 1 year, the improvement, I don't think that you can understate that. I think we talked last season, like if he could get from 21 to like 30% or like 27%, like a 5-6% increase, that would be awesome and be really encouraging. To go 10% in 1 year, to me, I don't agree with anybody that's trying to put a ceiling on his shooting. Like, oh, he's just not going to be a shooter. I could absolutely see this kid being like a 35-36% 3-point shooter next year, and even higher than that, honestly, if he really figures it out.
If you look at Jalen Suggs and kind of the way that I looked at Cole Anthony in terms of his season and halves, if we take a look at his efficiencies, Jalen Suggs, his first 25 games of this season, he shoots almost 4 threes a game, but shoots 26.8% from three. I think a lot of that was him just building the confidence to get to where he ended up. Because his last 28 games, he shoots almost 4 attempts a game from three and shoots 38%. That is a 12% difference between the first 25 games and the last 28. So
that's crazy.
That is nuts. So for me, though, just in general, and I'll kind of get into why, obviously, but I gave him a B. I think that his shooting increase was more than impressive. I think for me, I would love to see him distribute the ball more. I get that everybody's got a role, whatever it might be. I just would, in terms of his vision, things like that, we have seen his vision put on display before. I want to see it consistently, and I want to see him, seek out setting up his guys in those situations. He's an incredible defender, and I think that's why I didn't give him an A, because last year, maybe if he wasn't as great of a defender last year that he was this year, I would have maybe changed it to an A, just expectation-wise. I already knew, right? Like, we already knew defensively that was not where he needed work. He did put in the work and got way better in his efficiencies, but I want to see him distribute the ball more. Last year, 4.4 assists per game, and then this year, 2.9%, or 2.9 assists per game. Obviously, we look at Cole Anthony, same type of thing last year because of, with Markelle, only playing 18 games, that sort of thing. These guys had to take on more of a point guard type role in a lot of different situations, but I still would like to see that number higher. I think he was a better player, obviously, all around this year. So, and he played less minutes. So you can't ignore that either. He played about 4 less minutes a game. Played only 23
He
and a
played
half
less minutes, and his usage plummeted from 27 down to almost 21%. So, I mean, only averaging like less than 2 points less per game with like that kind of usage change is pretty good.
So, again, man, you talk about his minutes plummeting, his usage plummeting. We saw a ton of guys get DMPs this year that we didn't necessarily think would be getting DMPs, even Terrence Ross, but like Chuma Okeke obviously being one of them. And you're going to see Mosley have to make decisions. RJ Hampton, obviously, one of those two. But you're going to have to see Mosley continue to make these decisions on which guys are going to get minutes, who's going to get the ball in their hands, who do we have, what are our options, like assessing everything. This is going to continue to be a trend where, like, we look at things at the end of the season and it's like, man, this young guy really didn't have enough minutes, or didn't have the minutes that he had the year before, or whatever it might be. I think Jalen will continue to fight for minutes and get those minutes. But I think you've got to, I hope at the end of next year we turn around and Jalen's playing 27, 28 minutes again. Because 23 and a half, I don't know.
Where are you with like the starting shooting guard for next year?
I think it's got to be Jalen. You look at, you talk about the lineups and things like that when Jalen's in those. I think everything shows, like stats show, Jalen Suggs should be in the starting lineup. If he is the guy that we got the last 28 games of the year, his last 28 games, I should say, then you have to put him in the starting lineup, I think. But again, we talk about Cole Anthony, who receives an A from the both of us. Is it just that he excels in the 6-man role like we think? Or is it that he just improved all around and he can find himself in that starting lineup? This conversation is going to get very intense the more we get on, the longer we go with these guys and seeing them play.
just for a little bit more context, I know I mentioned the just how good he was in the starting lineup. I don't know if I gave the exact numbers. So the lineup of Markel, Jalen, Franz, Paolo, Wendell Carter Jr. They only played 115 possessions together, but their plus minus differential was they were plus 18.5 points better than their opponents per 100 possessions, which is good for 88th percentile in the league. Just for a little bit more context here, that same lineup, if you switch out Jalen for Gary, was 1 point better per 100 possessions, but they played 1,184 possessions together. So basically 10 times the sample size. So to me, it'd be a little bit irresponsible to say, oh, yeah, well, they're just going to be so much better, with him in the lineup. I'm trying to look here. We really didn't get a ton of looks with Cole kind of being the two guard in that lineup next to Markel and Franz, Paolo, and Wendell. I'm looking here on Cleaning the Glass. Luke, I don't know if you have another point that maybe you want to make on this while I'm looking through this here.
Yeah. No, man, I just think that as far as Cole goes, I genuinely don't know. And maybe, in the comments here, as you guys are listening to this on YouTube or watching us on YouTube, what do you guys think about Cole Anthony in terms of, do you think that he just thrives in that 6-man role? Or do you think, hey, let's give him a shot in that starting lineup and see what he can do? I mean, if he can produce at that level, it's going to be hard to make an argument against him.
Yeah, I've got it here now. So super small sample size, only 64 possessions. They were -1, 1 point worse than their opponent per 100 possessions with the lineup of Cole, Markel, Franz, Paolo, Wendell. So don't draw any type of conclusion from those numbers. The sample size is just way too small to really feel strongly one way or the other. But I would probably say that I would be leaning towards Jalen in the starting lineup. I think he just fits in better with that lineup. And Cole has just had so much success in that 6-man role. Maybe at least start the season with Jalen at the 2. And if it's not working, then I don't have any problem with you sliding Cole in there. But I would probably lean that way as well.
Yeah, I want to add one last thing, and it's just kind of a funny... It's funny to me because it caught me off guard. But NBA University actually posted some stats via Cleaning the Glass, who were also obviously Jonathan's using for the research on all of this with everything to do with net rating. But basically, he posted something today about the most played Magic lineups this season with their net rating and how many non-garbage time possessions they played together. And the best on this list was looks like it was Cole, Jalen, Franz, Bol, and Mo Wagner plus 9.4, which is hilarious. And they played 301 possessions together, which is the third most that this lineup played. So it worked for whatever reason, one reason or another, but Cole was a part of that. So that's kind of like the most successful that Cole was in that lineup with Jalen, Franz, Bol, and Mo.
Yeah, I see that here. Yeah, that's on. I'm seeing that now on Cleaning the Glass. Franz, to me, Franz is really like any lineup that he was in was great because I think he was the Magic were 9.9 points better per 100 possessions with Franz on the floor. So to me, like that is the common denominator. Franz on the floor, Magic good. Franz off the floor, Magic bad. And it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Want to give a quick shout out to our patrons, those folks that help financially support the show. If you've been listening to the show for any amount of time or you're new to the show, to the channel, and you like what you see, like what you hear, and you want to help financially support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/the6man-show. We shout out our brand new patrons anytime that we have them, but we shout out our Hall of Fame and Elite tier patrons on every single episode. So I'll start with Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin, Carson Tulo, Normal, Magic Player History, Julio, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, The Distract, Donkey Punch Dave, It's Not Okay to Say Okiki, Pierre A, Migzors, Nostalgia and M&M's, Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Drum, Danimal, Dutto 15, Bobby Skinner, Goni 93, Teddy Sylvia, Eric Lopez, Fuchsia, Juan Gerardo, Bill Fulton, Edmund, Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Destined for Greatness, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Ty Mr. TV, Joe Rothfuss, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95 Shred, Junior Bruce, Half Rican, Sean 177, Bulby the Dawn, Himlo Ban Himro, R Improv 221, Ray Pastrana, Magic Kid 714, Let's Spank, Don't Tank, Soft Taco, Jesse, Johnny B, Fuego Nando, Victor Cologne, Phantom Wolf 72, Iris Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Bulbul, his first name is his last name, Only Franz, and Maria. A big shout out to all of our patrons. You can find us at patreon.com/The6Man-Show. Luke, let's go ahead and take a look at Tankathon. The coin flip between the Chicago Bulls and the Oklahoma City Thunder is over. The Chicago Bulls won that coin flip. They will have the 11th best odds in the draft. So they now have an 8.5% chance of ending up in the top 4. So that gives the Magic a 91.5% chance of holding on to that pick. They have a 1.8% chance of ending up number 1 overall. The Magic sitting at 6th. They have a 37.2% chance of ending up in the top 4. They have a 9% chance at number 1 overall. Let's go ahead and sim the lottery here. And the Magic with the number 1 pick in the draft, baby.
Perfect.
And they keep the Chicago Bulls pick. That is about as good as it can go. And the more that I run this, Luke, the better that I feel because it's happening like with somewhat regularity. I know it's essentially a 1 in 10 chance. That's really not that bad.
Not that bad. Not that bad at all. And I think, obviously since the last time that we recorded, Chicago just locked into that 11 spot. They got a, what you said, 8.5% chance getting into the top 4. Need him to stay out of that. We need that 8.5% to stay away. We need the Magic's 9% to take over, catapult us into that number 1 spot. And at that rate, the Bulls can jump into the top 4 for all I care. Doesn't matter at that point.
When we're at the draft lottery watch party, which again is coming up on May 16th at 7 o'clock, clear your calendars. When we're there and the Bulls are there at 11, right? Everyone knows that pick will go to the Magic. And then if we're not there at 6, it's going to get electric. It's going to get pretty crazy pretty quickly.
And maybe we should clarify for if nobody else, the Bulls analysts, when they hold up Bulls logo at number 11, that means it's the Magic's pick, not the Bulls pick. You goobers. So that's
for those of you who are not familiar with that reference. 2 draft lotteries ago, the Bulls broadcast team was doing an in studio kind of watch party. And when the Bulls were there at 8, they thought it meant that they kept their pick.
Idiots.
But it was top 4 protected and it conveyed to the Magic. So they were completely embarrassed on their live broadcast, which was fantastic. But if you didn't get it, that was the joke that Luke made. Very funny. All right, Luke, I think that's going to do it for us. What do you say we wrap it up?
Yep.
All right, folks, for Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You have been listening / watching The 6Man Show. We will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The 6th Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at 6th Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!